Welcome to the Whistleblower Newsroom. I'm Christina Borgeson. On October 2nd, 2018, Washington Post columnist and Saudi dissident Jamal Khashoggi was suffocated and then hacked to pieces at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, by an assassination squad that included a close advisor to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and members of the prince's royal protective detail known as the Rapid Intervention Force. The utter savagery of it shocked the world. While the Saudi government lied about its involvement, and then President Trump hemmed and hawed about the Crown Prince's culpability in the crime, the CIA, after receiving a gruesome audio tape of the murder in progress, determined that the prince had indeed been complicit in the crime, had ordered the hit. Last month, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a report also pointing the finger at the prince. Now, the non-governmental organization, Reporters Without Borders, has stepped in to hold the prince and his accomplices accountable, not just for Khashoggi's murder, but for the persecution and torture of many other Saudi journalists. They recently filed a 500-page complaint with the Public Prosecutor General of the Federal Court of Justice in Karlsruhe, Germany, charging that these crimes are, in fact, crimes against humanity. My guest today is the lawyer in charge of drafting that complaint. Paul Coppin has headed up the Reporters Without Borders legal desk for the past 7 years. Prior to that, he worked with another non-governmental organization dedicated to fighting against torture. He holds a master's degree in international public law from the Sorbonne University in Paris. Welcome, Paul.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, listen, this is a major piece of work that you have submitted to this court. And before we talk about the details of the complaint, I wanted to ask you to talk about crimes against humanity, that definition, because people will think, well, it's a crime against Khashoggi, and it's a crimes against these journalists, but against humanity, why?
Sure. So in the complaint we filed, we list the cases of 35 journalists. The case of Jamal Khashoggi, which you described perfectly, and 34 other cases of journalists who are being arbitrarily detained in Saudi Arabia. Actually, 32 of them are still arbitrarily detained. A crime against humanity, it's a widespread and systematic attack committed by individuals in full knowledge of this attack against the civilian population. Journalists are a civilian population, according to international law. In Saudi Arabia, journalists are the victims of widespread and systematic attacks for political reasons, in furtherance of a state policy aiming at punishing or silencing them because of their activity as journalists. Why systematic? Because a policy is in place in Saudi Arabia to target journalists developed by the highest Saudi authorities to actively and systematically target journalists because of their activity to inform the public on issue of general interest.
Well, aren't they specific issues, like issues of human rights? I mean, don't they get in trouble? I mean, somebody was saying, if you're a journalist, I saw a quote, and I can't remember who said it. Oh, if you're a journalist in Saudi Arabia, chances are you're going to find yourself in prison one day. But
that's exactly why, because if you are a journalist in Saudi Arabia, you do face being jailed or tortured or killed, because there is a policy that we've listed 35 cases. The Saudi Arabia is a very opaque and arbitrary regime. It's very hard to know what happens there. So it's very likely that there is more than 35 cases. But the only 35 cases we list actually show that, how to say, that any journalist in Saudi Arabia can be targeted. In the cases we list, for some of them, we know why they've been targeted, because they've posted tweets or comments on the internet or published articles that are critical of the regime. For some of them, we don't know why they've been arrested or they are being detained. There is no charge, no official charge, no clear reason for the arrest. For some of them, it seems it is because they never publicly praised the regime. So,
oh wow, you
yes,
get in trouble just for that?
so it seems. But what our complaint reveals, it is that system of persecution of journalists. That 30, at least 35 journalists were the victims of, but any journalist in Saudi Arabia face and can be the victim of. So, but sorry, did you? I thought you were.
Well, I was going to say that the thing that's really kind of frightening, because I want to talk about some of these other journalists at some point. But one of the frightening things about your report is you basically say, well, they disappear, basically. You don't know where they are. You don't know what jails they're in. There's just no, it's like they disappear into a black hole or something.
Yeah, one of the crimes that we identified that constitute the crimes against humanity is enforced disappearance. Many of the 35 journalists we list were forcibly disappeared, at least for a while, meaning their family didn't know where they were, their lawyer didn't know where they were. They disappeared to reappear at some point, and their family realized that they were being jailed and sued by the regime. Some of them have actually never been sued. They are in administrative detention.
What does that mean?
It means there is no trial. It means there is no, it's just a decision by
They're being held without charges, basically.
Yeah, that is an administrative detention. It is a decision by the administration, the executive branch of power.
Wow.
And there is no judicial process. So, yeah, that is one of the difficulties we faced in building that complaint. It is the very opaque nature of the Saudi system. It is very hard to gather any information, and that is one of the reasons why our complaint comes now, because the Khashoggi murder happened more than 2 years ago. Among the 35 journalists we list, some of them have been in jail since 2012.
Before he came into power, Bin Salman came into power. Yeah.
Some of them have been in jail since 2012. Raif Badawi, for instance, a very famous case, has been in jail since 2012 because of insulting Islam, when actually he just criticized or discussed. He didn't criticize. He tried to open a discussion on his blog about the power religion has in Saudi Arabia. He's been found guilty of insulting Islam, and he was put in jail for 10 years and 1,000 lashes.
God, that's so medieval.
Yeah, it is. It is. But so, again, the very opaque nature of the regime made it very hard for us to build that complaint. And that's why it comes now. And we had a very hard time to gather information. The families are very reluctant to talk. They can really be at risk if they do talk. So we had to gather information with insiders, organizations that have outsider contacts. And we had to cross-check all this information and to verify all this information. It took us a very long time. It was very difficult.
That blogger's case is very interesting because at first he was not given 10 years, right? He was given like 500 lashes. And apparently they do a certain number of lashes at intervals. And this guy is so he's being, could you talk?
Yeah,
It's just crazy.
the sentence was 1,000 lashes. So far, he received only, quotation marks, 50 lashes, which is...
He's 37 years old, right? That's how old he is right now.
Yes, yeah, actually.
Young man.
He's a young man, yeah, he's a very young man. And so he received 50 lashes, and because of international reactions around this case, he hasn't received any more lashes since then. He only received 50 lashes. But still,
But then they added some more years. He didn't have 10 years at first, right?
No, that's true. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact details of this case.
Okay.
But again, all of this is very hard to understand. None of these trials are public. None of these charges are made public. For many of the journalists we have, we don't know the charges. And sometimes the charges come a very long time after we know they are in jail. And we don't even know if there was a trial, if they were convicted.
Oh, God.
And for most of them, it is charges related, to state security, terrorism, inciting to violence, when actually it is people that only exercise their work as journalists, only try to discuss public interest issues, that wanted to discuss the power, the regime, anything but anything that should be open to an open discussion in a normal regime. And to come back to the crime against humanity qualification, a crime against humanity, it's a systematic and widespread attack against a civilian population, as I said. Why widespread? Because it targets 35 journalists, but our analysis shows that it is actually any journalist in Saudi Arabia that might be, or that can be the victim of such widespread attack.
Right.
And more broadly, if you attack journalists, if you prevent any open discussion, it is an attack on the society as a whole. And so that's why we call it a widespread attack. And that's why we believe the qualification of crime against humanity, if you target the whole population of journalists in Saudi Arabia.
Let me ask you something, though. Can the Saudis come back to you in court and say, well, listen, we're not a Western country. We're not a democracy. This is the way we like to live our lives. And in our little society, journalists are not free. And that's the way we like it.
That's already what they do. Because not the authorities, but it's support online, who are actually often fake accounts, bots spreading messages on Twitter. And they say that we are all with MBS. So that's pretty much already what they say. That's how we are.
But in the courts, why is this in a German court, by the way?
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
They may very well say we are how we are. But the thing is, there is something called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There is international standards on freedom of speech. There is, and it is something that it's human and universal humanity. It's the law of humanity. People have the right to speak their mind. There is the right to due process. So I believe this argument, that's the way we are. No justification at all. And from a legal point of view. And why in a German court? Because we believe the German courts are very well suited to receive such a complaint. German courts have jurisdiction over core international crimes, even committed abroad, on foreigners, by foreigners. That's what is called universal jurisdiction. Also for political reasons, also because the German courts have shown that they are ready and willing to prosecute such international crimes. Very recently, there was a decision by German courts on a Syrian case, Syrian agents that were responsible for tortures of civilians, including journalists, in Syrian prison, were found guilty. That was a crime that was committed not in Germany, not by Germans, not on Germans, but it is a core international crime. And so many countries around the world equip themselves with what is called universal jurisdiction. They allow them, because it is an international crime a very grave international crime, they say our court can prosecute such crimes. And so the German law is equipped with that. The German courts are willing and able. And there is in Germany a political will. The German governments and the German authorities have expressed their interest for justice in the Jamal Khashoggi case. In other cases, in some other of the cases we list in our complaint, in particular the Raif Badawi case. So we believe the German courts are the best suited to receive such a complaint.
So let's talk about the real elephant in the room, though, which is the prince.
Yep.
He's a head of state. How are you going to prosecute him?
First, he is not a head of state. He is the son of the head of state. He is a prince. He's not the king.
That's true. Yes.
So that's important because there might be regulations in international law about immunity for head of state. He is not a head of state. Secondly, in the Rome statutes of the International Court, International Criminal Court, core international crimes. Sorry, you cannot hide behind your immunity as a head of state or etc. After, yes, of course, the aim of our action is to have the suspects we identify end up in a court of law. And we do not only identify the Crown Prince, by the way. Our complaint targets 5 suspects, the Crown Prince, 4 of his closest advisors or aides, and our complaint is what we call in English against any unidentified person that the prosecutor could identify as responsible for the crimes. So, but of course we want these suspects to end up in a court of law. It might be far-fetched or far objective, but there is many steps between now and there.
What are those steps?
The mere opening of a credible prosecutorial process by an independent court of law on the crimes against humanity in Saudi Arabia would be a first. It would show that the Jamal Khashoggi case cannot remain unpunished, that the international community, that countries that believe in justice do not let those crimes unpunished, that an official court can identify the crime, try to identify the suspects, officially say, we are trying to go after the suspects, identify the suspects, issue arrest warrants. All this would be a first and would be very important for justice in general in the world. You know, the impunity rate for crimes against journalists in the world is 98%.
Wow.
98% of crimes committed against journalists around the world remain unpunished. In Saudi Arabia, in Mexico, in Syria, 98%. Those crimes are never prosecuted. And the real criminal, I mean, because in many countries you have the guy who shot the gun who ends up before the court, but the guy who paid him never ends up in a court of law. So the opening of a credible judicial or prosecutorial investigation would in itself be a very strong signal in terms of international justice. And outside the legal point of view, it would really be a blow to Saudi reputation and MBS reputation. That, you know, the slogan or the latest G20 in Riyadh was "We inspire the world." That was the Saudi. How do you call that in English?
Oh,
the slogan.
That was their slogan?
Yeah, for the G20. We inspire the world. Okay, you want Saudi Arabia to inspire the world. Well, we're not gonna let the world forget that you trap, torture, kill, dismember journalists in consulates, in foreign countries, that you have their body disappeared and never recovered, and that you want the world to forget about that. No, you want to inspire the world? Okay, we're not going to let the world forget about your crimes. And it would be a blow also for MBS personal reputation. He's trying very hard to look like a progressive head of state. He's not a head of state, but a progressive.
Well, he's like the heir apparent, and he's positioned himself as the heir apparent who is going to be progressive. He's going to allow women to drive. He's going to do all these progressive things, and yet he's sitting there with this blood on his hands, acting as if nothing.
Yeah, and about letting women drive. Among the 35 journalists we list, we have women journalists, some of them who are journalists and bloggers and activists for women's rights. Some of them who were activists for the right for women to drive, and who ended up in jail, even though what they were calling for was accepted by MBS. So it means the Saudi power may give some rights, to look like we are opening the country. But if you dare opening your voice, even though it goes in the same direction that where we are going, if you dare opening your voice, you're at risk of arbitrary detention, sexual assault in jail, and rape in jail, torture. So this progressive MBS is an international criminal.
So let me ask you something. The Saudis had their own trials for this.
Yes.
Could you talk about that? What happened? And there's a particularly, I don't know. When I read it, I just thought, God, this is horrific, about the family, Khashoggi's family, having to forgive some of these. I don't know. Just talk about that trial or the trials for that.
I wouldn't call that a trial. That was a masquerade of justice. That was so yeah, they had a trial because they were forced to by the international community. So they had to put up a show and sue the agents. They order some people to do something, and then they sue those people for doing it. So yes, some people were tried. Many of them were later pardoned, but still MBS has never been sued. And his closest advisor, Saud Al-Qahtani, who we identify in our complaint, has never been trialed or prosecuted or officially identified as a suspect. And yes, Jamal Khashoggi's son, who is in Saudi Arabia, was forced to openly pardon MBS. And there is a picture on the internet where you can see him shaking an MBS hand, with MBS with a big smile, and Jamal Khashoggi's son with no smile. And you can only imagine what he has in his mind. But I do not believe for 1 second he did that freely.
Is he still there?
He's still there. He's still there.
It's like he can't leave because if he
I,
leaves, it's a signal that he really didn't mean what he said,
oh
right?
no, I don't think it's that. It's if he leaves, he's in trouble, and the rest of his family is in trouble.
Right, right. That's what I meant. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so Kafkaesque. It's horrible.
And you know, that's really what our complaint tries to show. That's because there is a trial in Turkey. There is a Khashoggi case in Turkey, but it's only a case about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. There's been this fake trial in Saudi Arabia. Again, it's a masquerade of justice. There is a trial in the US, but it's a civil case by the fiance of Jamal Khashoggi. Our complaint, it's the first time that crimes committed against journalists in Saudi Arabia are not analyzed one by one, but globally, to show the system of persecution of journalists that is in place. And this system constitutes the crime against humanity.
Are you worried about the U.S. stepping in, the U.S. government stepping in to protect Bin Salman at all? I mean, I know the CIA has come out and said, yes, he's complicit, the Office of National Intelligence, but,
Well, I don't know how to answer your question. First, the CIA report was very welcome. It confirmed previous inculpatory elements that were identified by the Turkish services, that by the US services, by the UN. It confirms our analysis of the situation, but it leaves us very frustrated because there is no accountability, no justice, no sanction. So maybe that's a first way for the US to protect MBS. But in our view, it is a very good thing that this report comes out, because officially the US have their report made public saying, we believe that MBS is responsible for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
well, the government also, they went after not Bin Salman, but they went after everybody else with the Magnitsky Act, which is,
yeah,
freezing their assets and so on. But they
yes.
didn't do that to Bin Salman. So to
Nope.
me, that was quite telling.
Yes, so the sanction system, it's good. It's a way of sanctioning people, but it's also a way to escape justice, because if you freeze people's visa, you make sure they never come before your court of law. So there is a kind of strategic choice to make between sanctioning people, imposing visa bans, or trying to look after justice, which is completely different.
Oh, that's so interesting. So they're getting a, so they're looking like they're doing something.
I wouldn't say that because maybe their analysis is that our court of law would not have jurisdiction, or it is very unlikely that MBS. I don't know. I'm not gonna talk for the U.S. government, but I'm saying that in the search for justice, sanctions such as the Magnitsky sanctions, which are, it's government sanctions. Sanctions. It's not a judicial process. It is a political decision to identify such individual and say, this one is responsible for corruption, because Magnitsky system in the US or in Europe, it's often for cases of corruption or international crimes. So we, as a government, we take the political decision to take a sanction, visa bans or asset freezing. But in a country because France and Germany took the same kind of sanctions, and the UK as well, but first, indeed, MBS is not listed in these people. But if these people cannot get a visa to come to our countries, then they will never be sued before our court of laws. And so as an NGO, we at RSF, we don't see these sanction mechanisms.
Well,
as
what about extradition? They
but,
can be extradited. You don't need a visa to extradite somebody, do
no,
you?
but you need you need an agreement with the government. You know?
We don't have an extradition agreement with.
I actually don't know if you have an extradition
Do
agreement.
you? Does France?
With Saudi Arabia, I actually don't know. But again, it's to have an extradition agreement. You need the two crimes to be prosecuted the same way in the two countries. There needs to be some reciprocity in the definition of the crimes. One country extradite his own citizen because the crime he committed in that other country is also a crime in my country. So given the nature of the Saudi regime, given the arbitrary nature of the Saudi regime, the complete arbitrariness of the judicial process, and the complete lack of judicial process, that I really don't think we have extradition agreements. And and again, we're targeting the Crown Prince and 5 of his closest aides and
Could you
advisors.
talk about each one of them and what crime they're being charged with, or you think they should be charged with?
Sure. So there is Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, who we believe is responsible for defining this policy of persecution against journalists and any independent voice. There is Saud al-Qahtani.
Also, he ordered the murder of Khashoggi, right?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. He ordered the murder of Khashoggi.
Yeah.
Important point. Saud al-Qahtani, who is his closest advisor, who is responsible for his internet strategy, and is really one of his closest advisors, responsible for many things, and in particular the online repression and intimidation of journalists. He took a direct part in the planning and in the execution of the plan to kill Khashoggi. He didn't go to Istanbul, this Saud al-Qahtani, but he organized it all. Was he involved in apparently the way they got Khashoggi too was because he was working with this other guy, and an Israeli firm could you talk about that? Gave access to his smartphone? It is this Israeli firm called NSO, who has how do you call that in sorry spying softwares.
Spyware.
Spyware, sorry, that infect your telephone, and actually many authoritarian regimes in the world use that NSO spyware called I can't remember the exact name of the spyware, but yes, indeed, but he was not trapped through this NSO system. He was spied on through this NSO.
Right. That's when they said we really have to get this guy, because they were hearing him speak his real mind as opposed to what he was saying publicly.
It is not because of what he said on his phone with his contacts that got him killed. It's for what he said on American TV, on the Washington Post, about MBS and the Saudi regime that got him killed.
But wasn't the final thing his discussion of setting up this group called the Bees or something? They were setting up which was pushing for reform in Saudi Arabia. And it was after his first Twitter about him saying, "I support the Bees." He was they were gathering. It was a gathering, it was like a social media platform for people who wanted reform in Saudi Arabia. And it was shortly after he had tweeted about that
maybe because I'm not in MBS head, and I don't know when he decided.
Well, I'm just talking about the timeline of it,
But one thing is, because Jamal Khashoggi for a while was a supporter of the crown
Yes. Oh,
prince.
he was close to the
Yeah,
family,
yeah, yeah.
wasn't he? Yeah.
He was. And he realized that that was not going anywhere. And he became critical. And I believe that's because he was forbidden to talk in US media by the regime. So for a while, he had been identified. And but indeed, Saud al-Qahtani was one of the person around the crown prince that, again, Saud al-Qahtani is responsible for the online image strategy of MBS, of the online strategy of harassment of any independent voice. So he's the one that identified the fact that Jamal Khashoggi was going against the regime publicly, was talking against the regime on the internet.
So he turned him into a target.
Yeah. And also one of the female journalists that are listed in our complaint says she's been raped by Saud al-Qahtani in jail.
Oh my God.
Yes. The third suspect is Deputy Head of Intelligence Ahmad Mohammed Asiri, who supervised the murder directly. The operation of going to Istanbul with a team of 15 agents with 2 planes and killing the journalist, dismembering him, having his body disappear. Jamal Khashoggi's body is still disappeared to date, you know, and so the crime of enforced disappearance, according to international law, is still ongoing. It is an ongoing crime. Jamal Khashoggi is still forcibly disappeared. The fourth suspect is Mohammed al-Otaibi, the consul general in Istanbul, who welcomed the team, set up the crime scene, and disposed of the body, or we don't know what happened with the body. So gave a car to have the body, we don't know, but he was the head of the crime scene, you know, the consul general. This crime happened in a consulate. That is completely unprecedented in a foreign country. That never happened. And actually, when it happened, I don't know if you remember, at first people didn't believe in it. What? A journalist killed in a consulate? Come on, that's too big. That is too big. And the Saudis had at the end to acknowledge they did it. MBS himself said, yes, we did it, but I'm not responsible. It's a rogue operation. That's the way he called it. So it's being done. It was done, sorry, in my consulate by my agents with 2 planes belonging to a company that my family, the 2 planes belonging to a company that belong to my family, or that are official Saudi planes. And I'm not aware of that as the crown prince of a country and who controls everything in that country. That does not make sense. The fifth suspect is Maher Abdulaziz Mutreb, an intelligence officer who led the team, who trapped, tortured, killed, and dismembered Jamal Khashoggi. So those are the 5 suspects we have identified.
Wait a second. Wasn't the guy who actually, the doctor, what was his name? Dr. Tagrib or whatever. I mean, he's on that audio tape to the CIA saying, they're saying, well, how are you going to do this? Because the guy is so, he's big, he's heavy. He goes, well, we start on the floor and we cut by the joints and then he goes, you wrap him in leather or something. And I just thought to myself, this, is he in this complaint?
He's not in our complaint, but again, our complaint is against any unidentified person that the complaint could identify. So the German prosecutor is completely able to identify him. He has many
Mr. Hacksaw. He had like a saw.
Yeah, and
it's just
oh, sorry, there was a joke going about MBS oh, I can't remember it, but it was a very well-founded joke about MBS and with the S being the so and
Oh,
forget it.
oh God. Well, I mean, that guy, his face is etched in my mind after the research I've done for this show, because I was just thinking to myself, you are a physician, you are a doctor, somewhere along the line you must have taken a Hippocratic oath not to do any harm, and there you are with your hacksaw talking about going after the joints, and then taking and wrapping each body part in leather, I guess, so that it wouldn't bleed or what. I don't know. It was just, it was so horrific, and I I was wondering, was he prosecuted in Saudi Arabia?
No, I don't think it was one of the ones that were prosecuted in Saudi Arabia. And again, most of those who were prosecuted in Saudi Arabia were pardoned or had their sentence reduced.
Yeah, 7 to 10 years they got, right?
Yeah, and
10 years max. Did anybody get a death sentence?
Yeah, some of them got a death. 5 of them got a death sentence, but their sentence was reduced to a prison term. And can you imagine that is one of the things I find the most horrific in this whole story. Beyond the murder itself and the way it was committed, it's the fact that this regime, this system, sends its own agent to perform a horrible crime, and then does not assume the crime, or assume responsibility for the crime, and say they did it and we're going to sue them. I mean, I'm not feeling sorry for those guys
Paul,
but
the CIA does that too. They send out people to do dirty stuff, and then when they come back, they have to get rid of them. I mean, this is a typical intelligence op type thing on super sensitive operations. It happens.
Yeah, but
if you accept a task like that,
no,
you better accept the possibility that you might not live to, see a few more years.
Yeah, but first, I'm not aware of any public process. The trial was not public in Saudi Arabia, but is there any trial in the US about? Is there any guy in the US who is being sued for what he did in the name of the US government? And he.
Oh, well, no. I mean, my point to you is,
I understand, but
they don't live to get that far. But in this case, what was so bizarre was that this thing, not only did it become public, but there was actually, I think there's also videotape of it, but the Turks at least put out the audio tape. And when you listen to the audio tape, you hear them say, they inject him first with sedative, and then they suffocate him. And
I don't think there is a videotape. I've never heard of a videotape.
Well,
there is definitely an audio tape that the Turkish services.
Yes, I know there were some law enforcement people who were talking about a videotape, but I don't know. I mean, I know that the Turks only gave the U.S. audio tape.
And actually, no one in the NGO community heard the video, the audio. There is the UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial and summary execution, Agnès Calamar.
Yeah.
Who did a very exhaustive and complete report about the Khashoggi murder.
Yeah.
And it is public, it is online. I invite all of the people that are listening to us to go and read that report.
I will post it with your...
And there is a transcript of that audio tape. And it is, in my position as the head of legal at RSF, I hear and read about a lot of horrible stuff. But that transcript of the murder was really, really frightening and chilling, and I was not far from crying, because you really have the transcript of someone who is being killed and who asks his murderers not to kill him, and please don't do that. It's very, very, It is a horrible crime. And again, that crime cannot remain unpunished. And the international community, democratic countries, independent judicial systems that have the means to prosecute such crimes, the legal means to prosecute such crimes, cannot let this crime unpunished. And to come back to our complaint, that is really what we are seeking with that complaint.
Is that transcript part of your complaint? The UN transcript?
It is referenced in the complaint, you know.
Yeah, but that should be exhibit number 1. Jesus,
yeah,
unbelievable.
We don't reproduce it in the complaint, but it is definitely it's one of the annexes and the reference of the complaint.
Now, has the International Criminal Court tried to do anything with this?
No, because a complaint needs to be filed, and we didn't go to the International Criminal Court, and because the International Criminal Court cannot decide in itself to go after a crime, a complaint needs to be filed. And you know, the International Criminal Court is very complicated to move. It's a very complicated system and very political. You know, you can see what happened with the crimes committed in Palestine or in Afghanistan. You know, if a lot of political considerations get into that, it becomes very difficult to have any investigation, anything happen. At RSF, we filed a complaint against crimes committed against journalists by the Israeli army in Palestine a long time ago. The prosecutor of the ICC was just recently authorized to open an investigation. It's a very long time NGOs are trying to have her investigate. She's just been authorized by the judges to open that investigation. So it's very, very long and complicated process before the ICC. So that's why we believe that a national court, an independent national court that is very well equipped, is much more suited to receive such crimes.
So now, Paul, you don't think that you're going to have gray hair before this whole thing is completed and a trial happens and so on?
Well, it doesn't matter. First, if one day a trial happened and I have gray hair, I would be very happy. But again, it's not, as I said before, you know, the mere opening of a credible, independent judicial process would be in itself a victory. If you have a prosecutor in a democratic country saying that I'm gonna investigate those crimes, what happened? I qualify it legally as a crime. I'm gonna investigate it. I identified those suspects. I can issue arrest warrants. And so I may have gray hair before MBS ends up before a court of law, but I don't think I will have gray hair until an investigation is opened by the prosecutor. And you know, this kind of action, it can have a lot of other consequences before the opening of a trial, and a lot of consequences that can be very, very disturbing for the perpetrators of such crimes. Maybe not for that complaint in Saudi Arabia, but you know, in France or in the US, a lot of dictators have their kids in our universities, or they come shopping in the winter at Christmas time in the Galeries Lafayette in Paris, or they come to the coast, the sunny coast in the south of France. They have a villa in the US or in Spain, and if there is such a complaint, they might very well get arrested at the airport if they come to our countries. So no more traveling abroad. And since the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, we've seen that Saudi officials and all of our suspects, they do not travel out of the country anymore. So it means they have identified the judicial risk of traveling abroad. So only that shows that such an action have an impact. And it shows that, oh, I committed a crime. I may be sued for that. I thought I was completely immune of any responsibility. Actually, I'm not. I can no longer go to send my daughter to a university or visit her. I was thinking of another complaint we had filed a few years back against an Iranian responsible. He was one of the heads of the prison system. He wanted to have his cancer cured in Germany. Well, there was a complaint against him, so he had to go back to his country because I'm not saying that we don't want these people to go to the hospital, but such an action can have a direct even before there is a judicial process. The mere fact that there is a complaint can have direct impact on their life.
Yeah.
And
is there a deadline? Is there a deadline for the court to come back to you and say, yes, we accept your complaint?
No, there is no deadline. We received, but it's a better thing that there is no deadline, because first we received an official acknowledgement of receipt for this complaint, so the German court officially has it, and the judicial process has its own rhythm and its own time, and judicial investigation is very thorough and very serious, and we want that judicial process to be very credible.
So they have to actually look into your claims. I mean, if they,
our complaint is just we signal facts. Our complaint.
You don't. Because I'm here in the United States. First, you submit the petition, complaint, right? And then the court has to tell you, yeah, okay, we think it has merit. We'll look into it. It's not just, and then they'll start looking into it. So in your case, you submit it, they have to look into it.
No, it's pretty much the same. They have to look into it to see if they have jurisdiction, if the crimes that we allege have been committed actually indeed seem to have been committed. So they need to see if they have jurisdiction. That is a preliminary examination. And the first result we expect is the official opening of that preliminary examination. And then there is an official investigation into the crimes that we signal. Our complaint, we send something that is very detailed and very argumented about the fact that Germany has jurisdiction, that the fact that should be qualified as a crime against humanity, about each of the victims, about why we believe those 5 suspects should be targeted as primary suspects. But basically, it's just we poke the prosecutor and say, hey, look, a crime has been committed. You should look into it. So it is really up to the prosecutor to say, oh, really, a crime has been committed? Let me look into that. And so it's really up to him to investigate. Because the US and European systems are very different. It's really it is not for the party, for the defendant or for the accuser to do the investigation. It is for the prosecutor and for the judge to do the investigation, the investigative judge, and then later you have the judging judge. I don't know.
As I'm talking to you here, all of a sudden I'm thinking about Julian Assange, and what's going on with him. Why couldn't the same thing be done in that court for him by Reporters Without Borders?
Because a crime against humanity, again, it's a widespread and systematic attack against a civilian population. Julian Assange is not a civilian population; he's a civilian.
Right.
So, however, how terrible is what happens to Julian Assange, it is not qualifiable, if that's an English word.
It doesn't qualify as a crime against humanity.
Exactly. But we are very active in the case of Julian Assange. We are advocating very strong for British courts not to extradite him to the US, because we have very serious reasons to fear that if he is extradited
Yeah.
extradited to the US, he may very well end up in jail for a very long time. And many legal authorities around the world have said that if he ends up in US jails, his situation could qualify as torture, psychological torture. And, so we are advocating very strong with the US, with the British courts. But you know, it is an independent process, or a judicial process. We cannot dictate the judge what his decision should be, but we can try.
There have been so many irregularities during that hearing, and I just wonder. It's almost like this thing is being dragged out as his health slowly declines, you know.
Yeah.
So in the end, I mean, it's almost like a slow goodbye.
The whole Assange case is completely manipulated. If you read the report of sorry, I can't remember. I believe it's one UN special rapporteur of
yes,
a European human rights rapporteur. I can't remember, but which details every step of the Assange case and show that because he's been accused of sexual assault in Sweden. If you get into the details of that, it is much more.
Oh, it was a setup.
It was a setup. So his image has been voluntarily destroyed. Well, because who wants to defend a sexual?
That's another special ops thing that happens. You know, if you wanna discredit somebody, put porn on their computer, or have somebody accuse them of sexual assault. And
some countries are actually became quite expert on that. Sorry, that's a completely different topic, but in Morocco, journalists are very often sued for completely set up sexual accusations, sexual harassment accusation, rape, completely set up. And in a country such as Morocco, who wants to defend?
Right, exactly. Yeah, a sexual predator or whatever. Yeah, exactly. You know, we've run out of time, Paul, but but I want to thank you for coming on, and I want to tell you that I would like to have you back on as things continue, because this is a very, very important case. And I worry a little bit about you and your team doing this, you know, because if the more successful you are, you could become targets, you know.
I'm not going to go in a Saudi consulate anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely not. But thank you very much for having me.
It was a pleasure having you.
Anytime to discuss again. And
perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good luck on this case.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.